Racist man assaults black girl on a flight. Ex-military veteran sees everything and changes the course of the story. Dallas Love Field International Airport buzzed with the dragging of suitcases, children calling for their parents, and the low hum of air conditioners struggling against the oppressive Texas heat. It was July, and the city seemed to be melting on every corner. Amid that rush, a 7-year-old girl named Avery Johnson gripped her mother's hand tightly, carrying a lavender backpack, covered in star stickers, and an old stuffed rabbit named Max. For Avery, this trip to Portland felt like stepping into a dream. Parks, mountains, and seeing the ocean for the first time. Every step through the terminal made her heart pound faster with excitement. Monica Johnson, her mother, was a woman with an easy smile but vigilant eyes. At 34, with curly hair piled into an improvised bun and wearing a simple floral dress, Monica looked like someone shouldering the world, yet never letting it show. For the past 2 years she had saved every penny, working double shifts as a nursing assistant, just to give her daughter a vacation that, for many, would be merely another summer getaway. But for them, it was so much more. Living proof that despite all hardships, dreams could still come true. When they finally called boarding for Flight 2914 to Portland, Avery tugged at her mother's sleeve, radiant, stumbling over her own feet in excitement. They found their seats, window and middle in row 18, while Monica struggled to stow their carry-on and her daughter's little blanket. To their right, already settled in the aisle seat, sat a white man in his early 40s, his dark blue polo stretched across a broad chest, and an expression so closed off it looked painful just to exist there. His name was Derek Sullivan. He rested a black folder on his knees and flipped through documents as if Monica and Avery's mere presence annoyed him. Derek made no effort to hide his contempt. The moment Monica squeezed past him to sit down, he muttered something under his breath and shot Avery a hard look. Avery smiled at him innocently, not understanding. As Monica helped her buckle in, she felt a weight in the air, a kind of invisible tension that words couldn't explain, only skin could feel, the heavy silence that black mothers learn to recognize far too early. Monica offered a brief, polite smile and tried to focus on Avery's joy, but inside, a silent alarm had already begun to ring. 2 rows behind them, discreetly seated in 22C, was Cole Parker, tall, skin bronzed by years of missions, short hair graying at the temples. A hurried glance would see just an ordinary man in a plaid shirt and comfortable jeans. But Cole carried the disciplined bearing of a former Navy SEAL and the calm of someone who'd faced life-and-death stakes. From the moment he boarded, Cole had been scanning the cabin, a habit he never shook, and quickly noted Monica's tense posture and Derek's aggressive demeanor. The flight took off on time, climbing through an unreal shade of blue sky. Avery, like any excited child, peered out the window in wonder, pointing at clouds shaped like castles and dinosaurs. Monica smiled, but kept her eyes cornerwise on Derek. For the first 20 minutes he merely huffed, spread his newspaper in an exaggerated manner, and bounced his knee as though trapped in an unworthy space. But it wasn't long before he began muttering under his breath, voices Monica couldn't fully catch, but tones leaving no doubt, contempt, irritation, and something far darker brewing. The first incident was so swift it might have gone unnoticed. When Avery accidentally let her elbow drift an inch past the armrest, Derek deliberately nudged her and with a cold smile loud enough for all 3 to hear said, "Watch it, brat." Monica's eyes widened. Confused, Avery retracted her arm and clutched Max protectively. Monica inhaled deeply, leaned to her daughter, and softly assured her that everything was fine, that people sometimes had bad days. But the knot in her chest tightened, and Cole, 2 rows back, observed every move, each detail of that intimidation play. Flight attendant Dana, a blonde woman with a practiced smile, passed through distributing drinks. Approaching row 18, Derek seized the moment to complain, tilting his head back in impatience. "These flights are getting unbearable," he said, looking directly at Monica as if she were the cause of his discomfort. Dana, trained to ignore minor frictions, simply smiled and handed him coffee. But Cole noticed. This was more than an annoyed passenger. It was something corrosive and dangerous, the kind that, if unchecked, could escalate into something far worse. Monica fought to remain composed. She knew this behavior well. Glances like these in supermarkets, bank lines, school meetings, the look that silently says, "You're a nuisance." But locked 30,000 feet in the air next to her daughter, that feeling of helplessness was overwhelming. She tucked the blanket around Avery, who was absorbed in a game on her tablet, and tried once more to ignore Derek. But it wasn't easy to ignore a man who ground his teeth and muttered with every movement she made. Derek seemed to feed off the tension. Every giggle from Avery, every curious question she asked, was met with an exaggerated sigh, an eye roll, a head shake, as if witnessing a personal offense. When Avery asked softly if they could visit the beach in Portland, Derek's mutter was audible this time. "People like you love to make a mess everywhere." The words slapped Monica's stomach, but she held a calm face, resisting the urge to confront him immediately. It wasn't fear. She was strategizing. Cole subtly shifted in his seat, closing his book but continuing to watch. He'd seen men like Derek before, men who didn't seek merely comfort or space, but power over others they deemed weaker. Experience taught Cole that most wouldn't stop until confronted, and that timing was critical. Too soon and he'd look provocative, too late and someone could get hurt. For most passengers, the flight drifted along quietly. People napped, headphones whispered private soundtracks. But for Monica, each second was an internal battle. Protect her daughter at all costs, yet stay calm. Her hand rested on Avery's arm, now and then, a silent reassurance, and Avery, blissfully unaware, doodled away on her tablet, oblivious to the poison seeping in just inches away. About 40 minutes in, the fuse finally lit. Monica leaned forward to reach for a packet of crackers. Derek, ever watchful for an excuse, shoved his elbow into her hand, hard enough for the crackers to spill across the aisle carpet. Monica closed her eyes for a breath, gathering herself. Lifting her gaze, she met Derek's triumphant smirk. He felt he'd won a silent trophy. "Maybe if you knew how to teach your kids, you'd learn to behave in public," he sneered loudly across the cabin. Monica swallowed hard. Her temples throbbed so loudly she almost heard her pulse. Avery, startled, looked to her mother. Monica touched her daughter's hair and said quietly, "It's okay, sweetheart." But she knew that okay was a house of cards ready to collapse. Cole saw everything, the shove, the crackers on the floor, the cruel satisfaction in Derek's eyes, and the electric tension in Monica's frame. He clamped his fist, but stayed seated. He knew in-flight protocols. Any impulsive move could be deemed a threat to the flight's safety. He had to ensure his intervention was both justified and necessary. His gaze never left row 18, as if on a mission, waiting for the precise moment to act. Avery, innocent, reached for the fallen crackers, but Monica gently prevented her. "Let it go, honey, we'll clean it up later," she said, though her heart was breaking. This wasn't about crackers or elbows. It was about Derek's masked brutality, his sense of entitlement to demean a child. Monica straightened, smoothed her dress and gripped her daughter's hand like she was holding onto something more than skin, her dignity. A heavy silence fell after the outburst, palpable. Monica glanced at the sky through the window, feigning distraction. Inside, she trembled with an old anger women like her learned to tame to survive. Not just for herself, but for her daughter, to show Avery that even amid injustice, you could hold your head high. But Monica knew there were limits. Every whispered insult, each disguised shove, built a wall of aggression that couldn't be ignored forever. Sensitive as all children are, Avery sensed the wrongness. She pressed Max's ears to her chest, uncertainty coloring her expression. Monica stroked her daughter's braids and mouthed, "Just enjoy the trip, my love, I'm here." She was whole and resolute, even when the world sought to chip her away. Deep down, she wondered how many more invisible battles she'd have to fight, so Avery would understand she'd never be defined by others' prejudice. Derek thrived on discomfort like a predator sensing fear. He stretched his legs into the aisle, forcing Monica to hunch as the crew passed. He coughed loudly when Avery spoke, and occasionally let slip comments like, "Some folks ruin everything," always with that feigned innocence worse than an outright attack. Monica clenched her jaw, teeth grinding, but refused to give him the reaction he craved. Cole, watching closely, decided he wouldn't wait much longer. He observed not just Derek but the entire cabin and crew, gauging when his intervention would be indisputable. He knew this wasn't only about protecting Monica and Avery. It was about every person forced silent in spaces where right and wrong hide behind "don't make a fuss." It was about showing that boundaries exist, and that on this flight, that line would be reached. During the second beverage cart pass, Derek crossed the line. Dana, the attendant, approached offering juices and snacks. Avery reached for an apple juice. In that moment, Derek jutted his elbow sharply, knocking the cup from Avery's hand before it could be handed over. The juice spilled across her yellow dress in dark patches. Time seemed to freeze. Avery's eyes widened in shock and shame as Monica reflexively drew her daughter close. "Watch what you're doing," Derek barked with contempt. But it was more than his words. It was the way he looked at Avery, as if she were an inconvenience not even worthy of compassion. Dana, mortified, knelt to help, apologizing in a practiced panic. Monica rose, hands trembling as she dabbed at Avery's dress with napkins. Her limbs quivered, not with fear, but with the quiet fury only those who have been silenced know. Cole rose before he thought, not too fast to seem aggressive, but with purpose. Leaving his book, he adjusted his shirt as though merely stretching his legs, then walked down the aisle to row 18. He paused beside Monica and Avery, his posture casual, but eyes locked on Derek. He had learned in delicate missions that any retaliation must come from the aggressor, yet his mere presence, solid as a wall, spoke volumes. This intimidation game was over. Derek looked at Cole, scanning him rapidly, and for the first time hesitated. Perhaps it was Cole's stance, his controlled gaze, or a primal instinct to recognize someone who wouldn't back down. He muttered inaudibly and shrank back in his seat. Monica, still busy cleaning Avery, caught the shift, and, for the first time since boarding, felt they weren't alone. In that small metal tube miles above ground, someone was ready to say, "Enough." Seeing the change, Dana acted swiftly. In a gentle but firm tone, she invited Monica and Avery to the rear of the plane to change clothes and calm down. Monica paused. Part of her resisted leaving the seat where she finally felt some protection, but Dana's kindness and Cole's silent encouragement gave her courage. With a grateful nod, Cole seemed to say, "Without words, go. I've got this." Monica stood, gathered Avery's backpack, and walked down the aisle holding her daughter's hand with unwavering dignity. As Monica and Avery moved back, Cole took the empty aisle seat next to Derek. He didn't ask. He simply sat. Derek turned away, indignant, but saw Cole's unyielding expression. Cole kept his voice low, nearly monotone, as if making small talk about weather. "I saw everything," he said without looking away. "Every shove, every insult, every attempt to humiliate a child." There was no anger in his tone, only a steely firmness that made Derek swallow hard. The mask of contempt Derek had worn since boarding began to crack. "You'll stay in your place now," Cole continued, elbows on his knees, body relaxed only in appearance. "You'll keep your hands and your comments to yourself, and if you try anything else, anything, you'll find that even up here, consequences are real." Derek said nothing, staring out the window, shoulders rigid, lips pressed into a line of frustrated hate. Cole expected no gratitude. He knew well that cowards shrink from a force they can't intimidate. In the rear galley, Monica used Dana's supplies, wipes, an extra blanket, a spare juice cup, to clean Avery. The little girl, still shaken, looked to her mother for answers she couldn't yet form. Monica gently touched her daughter's cheek and said, with a painful smile, "You are perfect, my love. Don't ever let anyone make you doubt that." In that cramped, moving metal tube, Monica vowed that no matter what came next, she would ensure Avery grew up knowing her worth, far beyond what cruel eyes might see. The rest of the flight passed in an uneasy hush, like after a storm that hadn't destroyed the house, but ripped off a few tiles. Derek remained rigid, staring blankly outside while Cole, still beside him, watched calmly, like a protective shadow. His presence was a constant reminder that evil retreats, not because it recognizes wrong, but because it senses. It will no longer go unchallenged. When Monica and Avery returned to their seats, Avery now in a clean shirt that Dana had scrounged from an emergency kit, Cole rose and walked back to his spot, without a word to Derek. He left behind nothing but the silent imprint of his intervention. Monica offered him a glance of mute gratitude, a deep recognition that needed no words. Sometimes survival among strangers comes in brief gestures, firm presences, silent alliances. Avery, exhausted, leaned against her mother and fell asleep long before the plane touched down in Portland. Monica stayed awake the entire time, eyes fixed on her daughter's sweaty forehead, thinking how this day, intended as the start of a joyful vacation, had become a harsh lesson for both of them. Yet she also thought that despite all the pain, it had been worth it. In those suffocating clouds, she had shown her daughter without shouting that dignity cannot be taken away, no matter how hard others try. When the plane finally docked at the gate, passengers stood and stretched. Derek was among the first to disembark, avoiding all eyes, slipping into the sea of unfamiliar faces. Monica, Avery, and Cole rose last, nearly in step. In the baggage claim area, as they headed toward the carousels, Monica felt a hand lightly touch her shoulder. She turned to see Cole, who simply said with a brief smile, "You're strong. Enjoy your vacation." Then he melted back into the crowd. For the first time in hours, Monica felt a spark of hope fill her chest. Stepping onto Portland's firm ground, Monica's legs trembled as if bearing the weight she'd carried through the flight. She gripped Avery's hand tighter, not out of fear, but necessity. The little girl, still half asleep, dragged her feet and rubbed her eyes, clutching Max. Ahead, suitcases tumbled onto the carousel. Everything looked normal, people laughing, children crying, announcements echoing over speakers. But for Monica, every step in that hall felt laden with invisible gravity. She guided Avery to a quiet corner, near a row of metal chairs where an elderly man dozed over a backpack. Seating herself gently, Monica pulled Avery onto her lap, as though she were 3 again. She sat still, rocked by the ebb and flow of the crowd, letting the airport's normalcy wrap around her like an uneasy blanket. She didn't think of Derek, nor of Cole, though gratitude still burned like a candle in her mind. She thought only of Avery, of what the world would be for her, and how, despite everything, she needed to believe the world could be different. Watching her daughter sleep, Monica remembered herself at 7, the green ruffled dress, chalk-dusty hands on the school playground, fearless, curious eyes. She recalled the first time she'd felt someone's look saying, "You don't belong." Back then, her mother told her some people carry stones in their hearts, and that it was her job not to carry those stones too. Monica smiled sadly. Now it was her turn to tell. Avery the same, with her own words and gestures, and in that tight airport embrace she silently promised she'd do it as many times as needed. The carousel beeped and churned faster, interrupting her thoughts. Monica spotted her battered blue Samsonite among the rest. Carefully not to wake Avery, she rose and hauled the suitcase closer. Mundane as the gesture was, in that moment it symbolized everything she'd endured, carrying her burdens, protecting what she loved, moving forward, even when the world tried to push her back. She slung Avery's backpack over her shoulder, balanced her daughter on her hip, and trailed the suitcase behind her toward the exit. Outside the terminal, the air was surprisingly cool for a summer day. Monica shivered as a northwest breeze carried the tang of ocean mixed with nearby trees. She adjusted the thin jacket in her bag around Avery, who nestling against her chest, breath shallow. The taxi stand was bustling, families chatting, friends laughing, drivers holding up makeshift signs. Life went on for everyone, indifferent to the tiny emotional earthquake Monica carried within. As she waited for a cab, Monica noticed a young couple ahead glancing warmly at her and Avery. Their baby giggled and Avery stirred, eyes blinking open to a tentative smile. In that instant, Monica realized Derek's cruelty didn't represent the world. There was beauty, kindness, spontaneous smiles amid fatigue and fear. That simple truth, almost banal, was like a faint light in her chest, warming what had felt cold and hardened. A yellow cab rolled up, its passenger window patched with tape. Monica laughed softly, shaking her head. Nothing about this trip was perfect. The flight, the start of vacation, but it was real. And sometimes surviving with your head held high is the greatest victory. She guided Avery into the back seat, buckled her in, then climbed in herself, suitcase in lap. The driver, a friendly-faced Latino man with tired eyes, asked their destination. Monica hesitated a beat, then replied with resolve, "The Grand Crest Hotel downtown." As the cab pulled away and Portland unfurled before them, Monica vowed that the awful flight wouldn't define their vacation or how they'd remember it. Yes, she would tell Avery the story when the time was right, but not now, not on this first day. Now was the time to rebuild what Derek tried to break: joy, belonging, quiet faith in the future. Monica turned to watch the passing trees blur into green and gold, finally breathing deeply without the weight on her shoulders. The Grand Crest Hotel was an old red brick building with tall windows and hanging flower boxes on the balconies. Monica let out a small sigh of relief at the neon sign. Not luxurious, but welcoming. And in that moment she needed welcome above all. The revolving glass doors swung open, and Monica stepped inside, Avery in her arms and suitcase in tow. The lobby smelled of waxed wood and fresh coffee, bathed in a soft yellow glow that made everything seem less harsh. At the reception desk, a lanky clerk with tousled hair named Jeremy greeted them with a genuine smile, none of that automatic hotel courtesy. "Welcome, ladies. Long trip?" he asked as he typed away. Monica nodded, offering a tired but thankful smile. Within minutes, he handed over a magnetic key and pointed to the elevator on the left. "5th floor, room 512. Breakfast included, and if you need anything, just call." In the room, Monica let the suitcase fall and gently placed Avery on the large white-covered bed. The girl curled to the center, and eyes barely open cuddled like a sleepy kitten. Monica allowed herself a moment, simply watching her daughter breathe peacefully. Then she closed the curtains against the street noise and sank into a faded velvet armchair by the window. There, enveloped in twilight and the city's muffled hum, she let her strong facade fall. Tears came without warning, hot, silent, stubborn. It wasn't just sadness. It was exhaustion, anger, and a personal mourning for the innocence the world seemed bent on tarnishing. Monica cried quietly, tears soaking her floral dress. Here, in this silent room, she could be just a mother holding the shards of her heart. After several minutes, she wiped her face with her sleeve, inhaled and looked at Avery. The girl slept on undisturbed. That was enough. For now, it was all that mattered. Still seated, Monica let her mind wander, recalling childhood warnings to be twice as careful, polite, and strong. She'd promised herself that her daughter would grow up knowing she deserved the world without bending to tight spaces others offered. In that dark, still room, the weight of that promise pressed down harder than ever. It wasn't only about shielding Avery from overt attacks, it was about building within her a strength no cold hate could erase. She rose quietly, crossed to the bed without creaking, and opened her travel backpack. Inside, amid rolled clothes and a crumpled toiletry bag, lay a hard-covered notebook decorated with flower sketches and inspirational quotes. She'd bought it weeks ago to record trip adventures, silly notes, future messages, little memories to cherish. Monica sat back in the armchair, flipped to the first blank page, and gripped a pen with steady hands for the first time in hours. Words poured out unguarded, not about Derek or fear or anger, but about courage and kindness, and how even in darkness there's light. She wrote for Avery, and for herself, a reminder that the day's hardships wouldn't define who they were or what they could build together. The lines were simple, almost childlike, yet full of truth. Today was hard, but it was also a victory, because we're here, because we keep going. Closing the notebook with a soft sigh, Monica acknowledged she couldn't erase what happened or wipe away the invisible scars it left, but she could build atop them something solid, beautiful, unbreakable. Rising again, she tucked the blanket around Avery, cracked the window just enough for a cool night breeze, and let the city lights wink like artificial stars. Monica smiled faintly. This wasn't a perfect start, but it was a real one, and she knew, real beginnings shape who we choose to be. The next morning dawned with car sounds below, and the tempting aroma of fresh coffee wafting from the hallway. Monica woke before Avery, body heavy yet mind clearer than it had been. She lay there for a few minutes, watching her daughter. Sleep. Avery's curly hair splayed across the pillow, her breathing gentle and sacred. Monica knew she couldn't undo yesterday, but she could choose what to build from it. In that moment, she chose to begin anew, simply, honestly, as her daughter deserved. She stretched, went to wash her face, and returned to see Avery sitting up, rubbing her eyes and clutching Max. "Good morning, Mommy," the girl mumbled in a sleepy voice. Monica sat beside her and hugged her tight. "Good morning, my champion," she whispered, kissing the top of Avery's head. They stayed embraced a while, unhurried, knowing some gestures need time to complete. Then Monica suggested, "How about we start our adventures with a giant breakfast?" Avery nodded shyly but happily. Soon they were downstairs in the hotel restaurant, a cozy room with lightwood tables and round pendant lamps sending out a warm glow. The scent of waffles, scrambled eggs, and fresh fruit filled the air. Monica picked a window table and helped Avery settle. They ordered pancakes, crispy bacon, and orange juice. While waiting, Monica handed Avery the notebook and a colorful pen. "Want to draw our first trip memory?" she asked, keeping her voice light. Avery thought a moment and began sketching uncertain lines of a tall tower surrounded by clouds and stars. Monica recognized it immediately, the Space Needle they planned to visit. Watching her daughter, Monica felt tenderness swell. Despite everything, hope lived in those small hands, tracing dreams. And that hope was stronger than any hateful glance or spiteful word. That's how they'd win. Living, dreaming, starting over. After breakfast, they set out to explore. The sun peeked through white clouds, and the air smelled of salt from the Willamette River. Avery skipped beside Monica. Max now clipped to her backpack, bouncing with each step. Monica smiled at her daughter's excitement, but inside she carried something new, a keener vigilance, a firmer resolve to protect their little world. It wasn't fear, but watchfulness, knowing threats don't always announce themselves, yet refusing to let her heart shrink. They boarded a vintage streetcar through downtown. Avery pressed her face to the window, marveling at old brick buildings, colorful murals, and flower stalls. Monica absorbed both the scenery and her daughter's joy, imprinting every glance and comment. At one stop, street musicians played saxophone and guitar. Avery clapped and laughed, and Monica realized that spontaneous joy could wash away yesterday's emotional grime. In the afternoon, they reached the Space Needle. The glass elevator rose smoothly to the top. Avery gripped her mother's hand, eyes wide with excitement and a touch of fear. On the observation deck, the view stunned. Mountains on the horizon, the river weaving through the city, the distant ocean glinting like a mirror. Avery dashed to the railing and let out a squeal of pure delight. Monica followed, laughing, and crouched beside her to snap a selfie, both with wide smiles, wind-tousled hair, and bright eyes. Walking back to the hotel, Avery looked up and said out of the blue, "Today was the best day of my life." Monica stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, knelt before her daughter, and hugged her tight. No words were needed. The embrace said it all. Monica knew the pain hadn't vanished, but here, in this new city, among strangers smiling and murals bright as dawn, they were building something far more powerful. Memories of love, resilience, and belonging, and Derek could never take that away. Back at the hotel that evening, after a full day's exploration, they took hot showers, changed into pajamas, and ordered a simple in-room dinner, mac and cheese for Avery, vegetable soup for Monica. Eating on the bed while watching an old cartoon, they laughed at clumsy characters. Each giggle from Avery felt like a piece of Monica's broken self snapping back into place. Maybe not the same as before, but stronger, more aware. Once they'd eaten, Avery fell asleep quickly, a gentle smile still lingering on her lips. Monica turned off the lights, leaving a soft lamp glowing in the corner, and went to the window. Drawing back the curtains, she leaned against the frame and gazed at the cityscape. A cool breeze fluttered through the gap, mixing the scent of wet asphalt with floral notes from the planters. Monica inhaled deeply, letting the cold air clear away the last vestiges of yesterday's weight. It was a new city, a new chance, and a new memory forged in courage. She thought of Cole Parker, his steady gaze and silent presence that had made all the difference. She'd likely never see him again, but he'd given more than gratitude, a living reminder that people still choose to act, even without obligation. Not saviors or heroes, just humans refusing to stay silent. Monica smiled softly, resolving to treasure that gesture as an anchor for future rough seas. Turning back to the bed, Monica watched Avery sleep, clutching Max. She sat on the edge and ran her fingers through her daughter's hair. "You are stronger than you know, my love," she whispered, "and I will always be here to remind you." She remained there for minutes, listening to Avery's calm breath and letting that peace fill her too. She didn't know what the future held, only that they had survived this day, and from now on, no look of contempt could erase the light they were building together. The next morning, Monica woke before the sun. She lay for a few moments, listening to the city stir, delivery trucks, distant horns, hurried footsteps below. a living, vibrant sound full of promise. Rising quietly so as not to wake Avery, she moved to the window. The sky was deep blue, streaked with orange at the horizon. Monica smiled, feeling a strange good energy course through her tired body. It was as if she'd weathered a storm and now faced a new beginning. She sat in the armchair with the notebook, opened to a fresh page, and wrote, "Freely. This is the day we decided nothing would stop us. Our dreams are too big for other people's fears." Each word reaffirmed the silent vow made on that flight. Never let pain dictate what her daughter believed, and never allow others' prejudice to shrink their dreams. When Avery finally woke, still drowsy, Monica closed the notebook with a contented smile and greeted her with a warm hug. "Today is another day of adventures, my love," she said, voice light and genuine. Avery beamed, hair, must by sleep, and jumped off the bed excitedly. Life called, and Monica knew she was ready to answer with her head held high, heart steadfast. Hand in hand, they stepped into the dewy morning, passing cafes opening and florists setting up stalls. Monica felt a calm certainty. No matter how many derricks crossed their path, they would always have this, the silent strength of choosing to love, dream, and move forward despite everything. Walking beneath a watercolor sky of a new day, Monica smiled. Not because everything was perfect, but because at last everything was real.